Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the 286 Project with me, Chris Akers. And in this podcast, we talk about art, culture, politics, sport, and anything else worth talking about. Now, today's guest has written this brilliant book called Power Through. It's right here, and it's about his upbringing, his time in prison, and then when he came out of prison and running successful businesses, well, actually a few successful businesses, and the journey that undertook. His name's James Longley, and he's here to talk to me now. Hello, James.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm well. I'm very well. Thank you for coming onto the podcast. We'll start like I do with all my guests at the beginning. So just explain briefly, basically, what's your journey up until this point in your life?
Sure, yeah. So thanks for inviting me on today. So I was born in Market Harborough, 1976, had a pretty normal upbringing. Sort of left school really without any qualifications. Did a few jobs that were sort of like trying to become a tradesman or something. My dream was to be a footballer, but it never worked out. I ended up as a carpet fitter. And then decided I was going to join the armed forces. Ended up in the Royal Air Force as a ground crew. My job role was called a supplier. Left there in 2002, decided I wanted to do something different and was going to do a degree, which I started at Northampton in business information systems. Unfortunately, the incident that we're probably going to talk about later happened in the August, I think, of 2002. And then I was charged and ended up in court in the May of 2003. I was sent to prison for 8 months. And during that time in prison, I decided I would maybe struggle to get employment. And decided I was going to set up my own business. I'd previously done some taxi driving at weekends and while I was at university. So within 2 months of me being released, I'd set up a taxi company called Spotty Dog Taxis. Put spots all over the cars, and we got really busy. We grew it to around 8 taxis, running sort of 20 hours a day, which was hard work. And I knew I could still do something better. And I was looking for something else. And one night, a guy got into my taxi. He told me we could sell energy contracts to businesses. So switching their energy supplier. This was probably early in the deregulation process in the UK. And I said to him, come and see me. It sounds interesting. And we used to go out and walk the streets of Leicester to start with, walking into pizza shops, restaurants, takeaways, pubs, and try and switch their electricity to a company called Economy Power. And everyone that switched, we got paid £500. And we grew it. We got a few people booking as appointments. I used to go out all day, every day, sit in appointments. Then one day, someone told us you don't need to go out and see these people anymore. You can do it over the telephone. So pretty much the next day, we stopped going out and started just cold calling through Yellow Pages. And we're employing staff and took on offices and started growing the business and taking on more energy suppliers. We ended up growing it to around 70 to 80 people, I think, in 2018, and then sold the business to a private equity company. I then had to complete a 2 or 3 year earn out. It was actually 2 years, but 3 years with COVID. And sold the business, and I'm still involved in small capacity there, and invested heavily in property and been involved in football clubs and investing and helping other businesses, and obviously wrote my book over the last few years, and also trying to help prisoners change their lives when they're released.
Okay, cool. So it's quite extensive what you've been to up so far. Obviously, just correct me if I'm wrong, you just briefly mentioned football there. Didn't you go to have a few trials when you were younger with some football clubs or a couple of football clubs?
Yeah, I played football. I had a trial with Leicester. I played one game and a few training sessions, but they said I wasn't good enough. But possibly you should look at lower leagues. I got invited to trials at Scunthorpe, Lincoln, and Huddersfield, um, and I went to Scunthorpe, but I'd suffered a bit of a knee injury, and didn't perform well, and then had to cancel the other two, which sort of like put the end to it, really.
Okay, okay. So obviously that dream's gone by the wayside. And so you're just going through school, like you said before, you went to university. I know you
I
said you
didn't, I
did
didn't, I
business.
didn't go to university.
Oh, sorry.
Um, I sort of left school with two GCSEs. I then went to do resits uh, to stay on at school for one more year. Then I went to do a BTEC in sports science, which I quit sort of halfway through because my girlfriend at the time I was 18 and she fell pregnant. Um, so I left and got a job initially. Actually, had a job packing Tampax, and then I moved to a battery warehouse making car batteries for a while. And then I was trying to get a trade, and I ended up becoming a trainee carpet fitter on £70 a week.
Okay, okay. So where did the university side come from? What happened just before that?
So I then went into the Royal Air Force
Yeah.
in 1997, and while I was in the RAF, I did resat some GCSEs, did a business studies A level, and and then I applied to go to university as a mature student when I think I was around 23 or 24,
Mhm.
and that's when I went to Northampton University to study and had to give 18 months notice to leave the Royal Air Force. So at the end of my Air Force career, I was going to university as well and doing shifts at the Royal Air Force and going to university.
Okay, okay. So you went to university, you studied there. Did you know what you wanted to do after university, or was that something that you were thinking of constantly?
I had no idea what I was going to do. I just felt like I could do better um, than what I was doing in the Royal Air Force. So I'd signed up for 9 years initially, but if as long as you're doing okay, you can extend for up to 22 years.
Mhm,
And I'd sort of met a lot of guys that were in the same rank as me, senior aircraftsman it's called, which you just get that rank after 12 months.
mhm,
And, they'd been in 17, 18 years and they felt like it was a prison sentence for them to have to stay the 22 years to get the pension. And I sort of didn't want to end up in their position.
yeah, okay. So what happened next after obviously you left the Royal Air Force because you had to do that 18 months. You've done your degree.
Yeah.
What was actually after the Air Force? What was happening in your life while you were doing a degree? Because obviously you've got a child to bring up as well.
So I was taxi driving part time, doing university, spending as much time as I could with my daughter, but I suffered a split from my partner at the time and had problems seeing my daughter, so that was another issue. And then I had the the issue in 2002 on Stag Party, which you might want to ask me questions about.
Mm,
And that resulted in me being arrested for racially aggravated common assault was the charge, um, which I ended up in court for at the end of my first year of so my end was second year, I think, at university.
mm. Yeah. So leading up to this incident, can you just explain the events leading up to that incident where the actual offence happened and
Yeah.
such as this?
So we'd gone out on a friend's stag party to Leicester. We met in a comedy club called Jonglers, and we watched a couple of comedians. I went to the toilet, and when I got back, it turns out one of my friends had heckled the comedian apparently, and they'd asked them to leave. So they'd gone. This was before I had a mobile phone, I think. Otherwise, I would have just called them. So I went to a bar that we usually went to afterwards and couldn't find them. And then we always would end up in a nightclub called Crystals. So I went to Crystals and again walked around, no sign of them. So I just decided to stay there on my own and thought they might turn up later. So I stayed there till the end at 2 a.m. and then went to buy a takeaway, ate my food, and still had a can of Coke that I took into the taxi with me. Asked the taxi driver to take me to Market Harbour, which was about a half an hour drive. And he asked me to pay him up front, which was £25. So I took the money out of the cash point. The next thing I remember is waking up in a pitch black road close to Market Harbour, maybe 3 or 4 miles away. And the taxi driver had stopped. He had my wallet in his hand and said he wanted more money because I'd spilled my can of Coke in his taxi. I explained I didn't have any more money and that he needed to take me back to Market Harbour, so I paid him. He said he wasn't going to take me back and that he was going to take me back to Leicester if I didn't pay. And he then proceeded to try and turn the car around. I was drunk and just woken up and lost it basically, and I grabbed hold of the steering wheel to try and stop him turning around. We ended up having almost a fight in the car, and I punched him to the side of the face a few times. As I was doing this, another taxi was passing, and they stopped and pulled me out. I actually knew those people, and they ended up taking me home. And the taxi driver went back to Leicester. And I didn't hear anything else until maybe a week or 10 days later when I got a knock on the door at around 7 in the morning by four police officers and was arrested.
Gosh. What was your initial thoughts when those officers knocked on your door? Because they say it was about a week and a half after the
Yeah, I mean,
incident.
I was surprised and not surprised, but I was very surprised when I got to the police station and they alleged it was a racist attack, which I said it wasn't. There was no racism at all. I said, yeah, we had an argument, and I'd have probably did what I did, no matter what their colour was or whatever size they were. I would have probably done the same thing under the same circumstances. But the driver had alleged that he was driving along and that I started attacking him because he was Asian, So this is, again, when I ended up going to court, I wanted to go to trial because I believe that he was lying because the car was turned around towards Leicester. So I said it was obvious that there was an argument and a reason for him to turn around. Because if I had just attacked him because he was Asian, then the car would have been facing Market Harbour, but it wasn't. It was facing Leicester.
Okay.
But I was charged anyway with racially aggravated common assault because there was one of the witnesses said I used a racial slur after the taxi driver had gone.
Okay. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say, and I think you say in the book as well, that there's parts of it you don't remember? Saying that obviously you're not that way inclined, but that you were so drunk that you
I
can't
was drunk,
see.
but I remember the moment, when he turned the car around. Uh, it's hazy, but obviously I read his statement, and I've still got the taxi driver's statement to this day, he says that he was driving along, and I just started attacking him, which 100% did not happen.
So, how long from the time you were charged, how long between that and the actual trial?
So I the incident was the August, and then the following May I ended up sentencing, but it'd gone back maybe 2 to 3 weeks before that, so maybe it was the end of April, early May that I went to go through. I went to a few different hearings and a plea and directions hearing when I said that I was going to plead not guilty and I wanted to go to trial. Um, so yeah, finally April May. So it's a stressful time when you're worried about what's going to happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, what were your feelings leading up to that? Because you've just got this months and this worry on your mind. It must be very hard to plan for the future when you know you've got this big court case coming up.
That I was worried, but I was convinced that I would go before a jury and give my story, and they would find me not guilty.
Mm,
Um, although, yeah, you still have these worries that something it wouldn't work out. Um, but as I say in the book, eventually I went I went for my trial, and I was on legal aid. I didn't have the funds to pay for my own legal team, and a different barrister came in, and she said, I don't know what you've been thinking about, what you've been advice you've been given, but I think you're going to get found guilty, and you're going to go to prison for up to a couple of years. And she gave me around 20 minutes to think about it before the trial was due to start. Um, she said, if you plead not guilty, you hopefully get credit for pleading not guilty, and we can talk about your past, that you've been in the RAF, you're doing a university degree, you've got a daughter, and
mhm.
probably that will be enough to stop you going to prison and to get a community service order.
Yeah, obviously it didn't work out like that. Obviously you were found guilty. So bear in mind that's what you thought might happen. You might get a community service order, or your boss will advise you of that.
Yeah.
What was your instant feeling when jury said they found you guilty?
So there was no jury in the end. So I've changed my plea to guilty just before the trial, and then the case was adjourned for pre-sentence reports where they recommended community service. Then I went back to court for sentencing, and I went in. I think it was 10 a.m. ish, quite early on, and the judge said that the sentence he had to pass was custodial, but he didn't know how long it should be yet. So he remanded me in custody till after lunch. So I spent around 3 to 4 hours in the cells at the Crown Court. And again, my barrister came down and said, I've seen judges do this before when someone who's not really been in trouble before, the judge is, scaring them, giving them a few hours in the cells, and then they change their mind and give them either a suspended sentence or community service.
Okay. Because right about this time, you'd actually started a relationship with someone else, and that person had kids, and
Yeah,
obviously they care for you as well, and obviously got members of your family. So I imagine the burden on them must have been immense straight immediately.
yeah. I think it was very tough for them. Your mum and your dad and your partner to be sat there watching it, and they probably took it harder than me, I think.
So what was your basically what when you first went into prison, how did you manage to cope with it? Because it's not something where someone expects to go in, unless you're a real career criminal,
Yeah.
that might get caught. So what was your initial thoughts when you first went in there?
So I was taken from the cells at Crown Court and put into a prison van around 5 o'clock, and then I was taken to Leicester Prison, which is a B cat prison, and I've driven past it lots of times in my life, and it's always looked scary,
Mm,
uh, with big doors. So the doors open and you go in, and then everyone who's on that van gets taken out and processed and go through like strip search and seeing a doctor and taking all your belongings off you. The doctor actually asked me, what are you addicted to? And I said, nothing. Yeah, I've got no addictions. And then you're taken to an arrivals wing, I think it's called, which is a bit nicer than what you're going to get sent to the next day. Brightly coloured, painted, and there's a bit newer. And I was actually put into a cell with another Asian guy on my first night and told him what happened, and we became sort of friends. You get one phone call, so I was allowed to ring my partner all the time. He was really upset. Then you spend that first night obviously not sleeping very well. Then in the morning you get a few visits from different people in the prison, like the vicar, and then someone comes and tells you what category prisoner you're going to be. So they told me I was a DCAT prisoner, and that they'd hopefully try and get me to a DCAT prison as soon as possible. Then you get taken up to the real wing, which is just how it looks on TV. And I was put into a cell with a guy called Glyn, who was okay with me, and I said it's my first time, and he tells me some rules that he wants me to follow, and he'd actually got pictures, drawings of the devil having sex with people. And he asked me what I thought of his pictures, and I said I love them. And you just lay on your bed, and you got a lot of thinking time. I don't think I got out of the cell. We got 1 hour of exercise for the 4 days. So I was locked up for 23 hours a day for the first 4 days. Managed to get hold of some books. And I used to do a bit of training, like burpees and press-ups, written on the spot. And Glyn would say that I'm mental. And then sometimes he'd be just laying on his bed and he'd just jump up and start screaming out of the cell windows, and you'd hear sirens going off, which apparently were like potential suicides in the prison or fights. And so again, just kept my head down and stayed in my cell really for 23 hours a day.
Why, considering your first cellmate was someone who was Asian and the nature of your crime, why did you decide to tell him the exact nature of what you did? Because that could have easily backfired.
Again, I felt like I was hard. It was harsh, and that I didn't deserve what happened to me. And again, yeah, you're right. It could have backfired on me, but he was fine with me. And every Asian person that I met in prison, I told them, and always had a good relationship with everyone.
Yeah. Were there any, so from there, you said you had a lot of thinking time. What were you exactly thinking about? Just what you wanted to do with life after you came out?
Just like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And have I damaged my relationship with my daughter? Because at the time, my ex-partner wasn't happy with me seeing her anyway. So I thought, and I'd not told them, hoping that I was just going to get away with it. So they had been informed that I'd been sent to prison. My university, they had to be informed that I'd been sent to prison, and I had no idea what was going to happen with the rest of my life, really.
Okay. How long did you serve in prison?
4 months.
Okay.
I was moved to a DCAT prison called North Sea Camp, which is near Boston, towards Skegness, on the following Friday. So I think I did 8 or 9 nights in Leicester, and then was moved to a DCAT prison, which is much less harsh conditions, and you've got your own key to your room. You can walk around. There's a big field that You used to go running around. There was a gym that you could go and train at. But I actually got a job in the education centre, helping other prisoners with their maths and English.
Mm.
And they managed to get hold of my books as well, and I was able to revise for my exams, which I was able to sit in the September before I was released.
I was just going to ask you that. Did you do any courses when you were in prison?
So I just carried on with my degree, uh, and helped other prisoners really with their maths and English.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that get put on. There's basically working farms, so you either work on the farm or in the kitchens or a cleaner. But I managed to get a job in the education centre.
Okay. So all that you're doing all that in prison, you've come out, and then what did you initially do when you first came out?
Uh, I was already thinking I'm going to start my own taxi company, which was obviously ironic considering
Mm,
I had my issue with a taxi driver.
yeah.
I had already had my taxi license because I was working part time. So I applied for a loan and got the loan, and then bought two taxis, got them registered as taxis in Market Harborough, and then so within 2 months we were running with a phone number and two cars, with my dad and my brother, my partner, and we were just doing shifts, working taxis, and got really busy really quickly and started buying more taxis. Um, Unfortunately, the other taxis in Market Harborough didn't like it, so they put a complaint into the council that I shouldn't be driving taxis, and because I hadn't informed them about my prison sentence, they suspended my license, and also Leicestershire County Council stopped all our school runs, which were really key accounts for us.
Mhm.
So that really put a dent in, the takings, and I couldn't drive. But I appealed, and eventually I did. I was allowed my license back, but sort of the damage had been done a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you kind of alluded to it earlier, the amount of hours you were working at taxi firm must have just to keep it afloat must have been immense. And your partner, I think, took over that running. Well, she helped you a lot with that as well,
So
didn't
my brother and my dad, yeah, and then
she?
we had another 7 or 8 drivers and some part time drivers as well.
Yeah, that must have been immense. So the taxi service is over, but then correct me if I'm wrong. Before that was over, is that when the guy came into the taxi and talked about selling
Yeah,
energy? Was he? Yeah.
yeah. So a guy called Gavin, I didn't know him, got in a taxi one night, and you obviously do get drunk people who want to talk to you, a lot, and sometimes you just want to get them out, and get to your next job. But this guy seemed like I was interested in what he was saying.
Yeah.
And like I say, I was already looking for something new, and I'd already put in what's called a BT feature line, which gave me 4 lines at the taxi office. I already was thinking about telesales and what we could sell. And then I said, if you're really serious, come and see me on next week, and we could talk about this energy business. At the time, I had no idea that you could even switch energy supplier.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean I've got a main job other than this, and but I remember a few months before that I was unemployed. Apart from 1 week where I did sales, and it was to do with energy, which I wasn't that great at, and hence why I lasted a week.
Yeah,
And
it's
when I
tough.
was reading your book, it was interesting in terms of how you got into it and so on and so forth. But if you've never encountered like something like energy before, I imagine there must have been a lot of research you had to do in terms of knowing how to sell it and what you're
Yeah,
selling.
so Gavin, to be fair to him, Gavin taught me, and then but I had no background in sales particularly, or had no idea about energy. So he taught me about kilowatt hours and how to show, you know, work out a bill, and how we could save the money. So again, you're just looking for savings. So if they're on 15p day and 10p night for their electricity, then obviously if we could get it at 12p and 8, then we made them the 2 or 3p saving per kilowatt, and then we would just work out how many kilowatts they use per year and multiply it, and that would be the saving.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So you started this energy business. Things seem to be going well. Um, how long was it before you really started going for actually I could really do something with this?
It was quite a while. We went through. I didn't even realise it at the time, but obviously there was the financial crisis in 2008, and we had no debt and no major overheads, so we got through that, completely fine. I remember oil went to $200 a barrel around that time, and energy prices were very volatile, and it was tough to sell. So that was one of the tough times. Gavin had actually left and decided to go travelling in 2006. So I carried on my own, and then he came back in 2009 and wanted us to start again, which we did, which we called that utility bidder. And there was another partner involved that came in 2009 as well. But I ended up buying his shares in around 2013. And I also bought Gavin's shares in 2018, the year before the sale.
Okay, okay. Do you expand at this point? Do you get your own office space during this time as well?
So we had offices from around 2004 in Market Harborough. Then we moved to another office that wasn't serviced. We didn't realise, the costs and implications of having to have your own phone system and all these other things. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were just winging it all the way. And then I'd say in around 2011, we moved to some nicer offices in Market Harborough. Then in 2015, that's probably 2013, 14, I really realised we had something good. And then I'd got involved with Corby Town Football Club as a sponsor in around 2015, and we were already looking to maybe move the business to Leicester or Northampton, and one of the other directors at Corby convinced me to move to Corby, and we took on a huge office which was about 10,000 square foot, and moved the office there. And then we also opened an office in Manchester in around 2017.
Okay, okay. So this is expanding and so on and so forth. What was happening in your personal life at this point? Was that the most stable you've been, or was a
Yeah,
turmoil?
no, I'd been very stable and was just really focused on growing the business, and it was a major focus for me. I also did some charity work and got involved in white collar boxing and did some events, and started putting on my own events, and I did a charity Strictly Come Dancing, and learned some the waltz and cha-cha-cha, and had to do a show dance, which was when they asked me, I said there's no way you're ever going to get me dancing in front of 400 or 500 people, but I did it, and it was a great night.
Oh, cool, cool. So business expanding, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but was it another company made the offer to buy the company, or was it you decided to put it on the market at that point?
No, I never put it on the market. I got an email one day from a private equity company, and they were talking about helping us to grow, and just interested to know what our plans were. So we had a couple of meetings with them, and eventually they made me an offer to buy the business,
Mm.
which I accepted in around September 2018. And then they went into their due diligence, and we finally completed the deal it was 2 days before Christmas, I think, on the 23rd of December at 3 a.m. in Manchester.
Yeah,
So I had
so
to get a taxi, ended up getting a taxi back from Manchester to Leicester at 3 in the morning.
why couldn't you stay in a hotel?
Sorry.
So why couldn't you stay in a hotel if it's 3 o'clock in the
I
morning?
don't know really. We never planned. We should have got it done earlier. We were expecting to be done at 5 in the evening, but it kept dragging on. We kept going back to the offices, and they said we're not ready yet. Go and have some food. Come back at 9. Come back at 9. The solicitors were still arguing about different things. Went out again. Came back at 11, and then just sat down waiting, and it was about 1:30. I think they were finally ready to sign, and literally I had probably 200 pieces of paper, I think, to sign,
Mm,
to transfer the business, and then they brought out the champagne, and we had a glass of champagne, and then just decided to get a taxi and get back home.
so you've done that. Obviously you got paid, remunerated very well from that. But then you decide, obviously you're still part of that company now, but you decided that you almost wanted to put something back into helping prisoners. Um, First of all, or people going to prison and like trying to find a way back. First of all, how long had you been out of prison by this stage?
Uh, I don't think that came till later. We obviously went through COVID and my earnout, and then I became less and less involved with the business and was spending more and more time abroad, and sort of felt like I'd lost purpose a little bit.
Mm,
Sometimes feeling like nothing to get up for. My whole life was dedicated to building that business. I think the majority of it, and even things I enjoyed, like going to watch football or going to play golf. I felt like I used to take people because I was trying to get a better deal with an energy supplier or try and get a contract. And when all that had gone, it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do anymore. So then I was sat in Dubai for a while and decided I was going to write the book and try and help prisoners as well.
okay, cool. So before we go into your help with prisoners, obviously going through the criminal justice system and then through prisons as well.
Yeah, I think
Let's,
the problem we've got in prison is that people just end up going back, or committing more crime. And it's a tough one because people need to be punished. Um, but how do you rehabilitate them is the big question. And I don't think people should be defined by the worst mistakes.
mm,
Um, they need a second chance.
yeah,
People
yeah.
want a second chance. Obviously, some people don't, and they're probably the ones you can't help.
Cool. How about, I know you're in a county D prison, so it might be slightly different, but how was the day-to-day running of prison? Because when I've interviewed people who've gone to prison before, they've said there's various things wrong in terms of the actual prison themselves. A lot of them aren't fit for purpose.
Yeah,
There's
yeah. I
maybe
mean, in
people
Leicester, for
going through.
example, is being locked up 23 hours a day is not good for anybody,
Yeah, yeah.
or locked up a lot of the day. And again, even at DCAT, there's enough resources, there's enough courses to help people change. Um, I maybe was a lucky one that I had the mindset that I wanted to do something different anyway. It didn't matter what help they gave me, but they were helpful to me,
Yeah.
allowing me to go and sit exams and things like that.
Because as you said, you were in prison for 4 months, and even though people might say, "Oh, I'll say 4 months," still a lot can change for that. So you imagine someone who's there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, where if you're renting, you could lose your house, you could lose friends, could move. even though that could go quickly, a lot of things can happen in that time. So
Yeah,
how do you do
yeah.
that?
Again, I didn't say in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't very long, but I still had that on my record for the rest of my, for the rest of my life. And I think it was 10 years till it was spent. And obviously, I did worry that I would be almost, it would stop me getting work or doing jobs that I wanted to do. And it has stopped me, it has caused me issues. There's a financial institution that refused to let me invest money with them when I sold the business uh, it was like 15 years before, and we also looked at starting an insurance company, and I wasn't allowed to be involved with it. Anyone with a criminal record not allowed to be involved in insurance. So and I've spoken to other people who've been released from prison, and some people do struggle to find jobs, and for people not to give them a second chance, really.
Well, this I was going to ask you is you kind of briefly mentioned this when you talked about taxi business, but when you came to energy business, did you ever affect, you kind of listed some there in terms of even starting a business in the first place, say getting loans for it and this sort of thing?
Sorry, say that again.
So basically, when you started when you started to go to energy and start that business, did your criminal record have a affect you in like starting up that business? So, for example, if you're trying to get, I don't know, a loan from the bank to start it or various funding,
Yeah,
did
I
you?
mean, I got a personal loan. I didn't. Again, there's been times where I've been asked the question, and whether I've disclosed it or not is another matter.
Mhm.
And I probably wouldn't have disclosed it. And again, it worries you that I've got a loan and I haven't disclosed it. And if they did enough digging, they'd probably find out. I've spoken to other people that have been released from prison and who have served, 4-year sentences, and I think it's always with them. They will never go away.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So quickly then, before we get into prisons, just in terms of starting a business, because obviously there's been a lot with, without trying to get too political on it, a lot of just government about business and changing tax and stuff. How easy do you think now, probably compared to when you started, is it to start a business now? Because I know for some businesses it seems to be quite difficult.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, if you've got a skill that yourself that you can sell, then I think that it's easier. And I always felt that you should do something that and that's why I ended up doing taxing, because that's all I knew really that I thought I could monetize. Um, but I had to make it work because I didn't have any plan B. Um, but I'd probably advise people, because I think a lot of people have said to me they'd love to start a business, but they couldn't afford to give up the day job and things like that. So I'd probably say, you need to try and do something on small scale till you can cover your overheads of your cost day to day. Then you can start looking at taking on staff and quitting your job.
Mm. Is there anything that you think, from a legal point of view, from a business point of view, that government could do that would make things easier for people to start a business?
Uh, I feel like the government is not helping. I'm sure there's like the Duke of Edinburgh Award. I think there's some stuff there and charities that can help people. Um, but yeah, again, I've just recently started another new business, and I feel like it is getting much harder.
Mm, mm. Seems that way, especially when it comes to things like I imagine like tax, where I think it seems like the tax threshold is becoming so high now that just to start a business, correct me if I'm wrong, to start a business, a lot of that money is going towards tax anyway. So it's
Yeah,
quite
obviously,
difficult.
you need to make a profit first before any tax is paid. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So going back to prisoners,
yeah.
what are you doing specifically in terms of helping people come out of prison and what's
So
that?
there's a couple of people I've helped personally. One that we have playing at Corby Town, and one that worked for us for a long time. We supported him through his prison sentence. More recently, I've been into prisons to do talks, and we're in the process of setting up a charity that's going to be focused on helping them with rehabilitation and sales skills to either get a job in sales or to start their own business. And we've got around 10 or 15 prisons lined up that we're planning to go into over the next few months.
Okay, so it seems to be so long have you been doing that for? Because it seems to have been something that's gone very quickly.
So I did the first one a few months ago at a prison called HMP Fossway in Leicester, and then we've just recently, signed a deal to go into the other 10 to 15 prisons.
Okay, cool. What do the prisoners that you're helping currently, what have they said to you in regards to how hard it's been for them to get on in life once they've come out of prison?
Uh, it, they say it's really hard, and they're really concerned about their future. And even like getting a bank account, for example, is difficult for them. There's, I'm trying to give them hope, really, that it's there is something better out there. I spoke to people; they don't know what they want to do, what they could do. They've only ever sold drugs in their life, and again, it's like, we'll try and maybe you can learn more sales skills because you can obviously sell.
Yeah. I was going to say, are there any courses in prison that help with that at all? That specific to prison, or business, or
There are. We found a few that again, but it's how much funding do they get, and how many people can they help. We found a few charities that go into some prisons, but again, and there are often employers that help. Obviously, Timson's is a famous one, and he's now the prisons minister. So we would like to have a chat with him.
yeah? I was just thinking of CVs because again, and you've said this sort of throughout the interview. How do you tell people? Because I think one of the problems is if you say you've got a criminal record without people even asking what type of crime it is or details of it, automatically you're going to have this scar on your back, so to speak.
Yeah, stigma. Yeah.
Stigma, yeah. That must be really difficult for people. So I think the work you're doing is very good in terms of developing those skills because it seems like more and more. Obviously, you can a campaign to get companies on board, but it seems more and more you almost have to start your own business to get ahead in life in that
Yeah,
respect.
I mean that's where I was at. Was I'm going to start my own business, then I haven't got to have that worry of whether someone's going to give me a job or not. I'll take and almost put my destiny into my own hands.
Yeah, indeed. You said at the start that you got involved with charities. I think you got involved with a football team. Are you involved, besides what you're doing with prisons, are you involved with any other charities as well?
So right now, I'm joint owner of a football team, which is called Town Football Club, and again, there's huge community work that goes on there in football with men's team, ladies team, lots of junior teams. And previously, I'd been involved in white collar boxing events that had raised money for cancer research, and um, I think they raised around £30 million across the country for cancer research.
Okay, good. Well, as I said at the start of the interview, I really enjoyed this book. I would highly recommend it to everyone. If people want to find out more about your work, where can they go?
So Twitter, well, X now is James Longley One. I've got that's probably the best place to get me, yeah, on X.
Okay, then cool. And I'll leave a link in the description below where you can purchase this book as well. I do highly recommend it. We've had a lot of people come out of prison or been involved with prison on this podcast, so it's always good to hear different perspectives from it. So James Longley, thank you so much for coming onto the 286 Project podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chris.